Now let us quickly discuss about the kinetics of rigid bodies. I'll start with the basic definition, which is that of torque. Torque basically gives you the tendency of a force to cause an object to rotate about a given point or about a given axis. Okay. A very simple example of this is you take a rod, you have a hinge here, and then you try to apply a force, okay, on the rod in some direction theta. So wherever, if I am trying to find the torque about some point, I'll call that as my origin. Okay, then wherever the point of contact of the force is, I'll say that that is my radial vector. So that will be known as my r vector, r, and my force vector is F. So my torque is nothing but a cross product between the radial and the force vector. Okay, and what this means is my F will have two components. One will be along the rod, one perpendicular. Okay, so only the component that is perpendicular to the rod will be involved in rotating the rod or changing the state of the system from being in this orientation to this orientation. Okay, and the F cos theta that is there, which is along the rod, it will be balanced by whatever counterbalance, it will be counterbalanced by the reaction force of the pivot. Okay, so thus it will not contribute to rotation. So what you should keep in mind is torque. The magnitude of torque is given by R into the force applied into sine of theta. Okay, and it is directed along some direction n cap. Okay, this is what you should keep in mind. Graphically also you can see this, the same thing. I have a point O, there is a radial vector r, and then you are applying force in some direction F. Okay, now with respect to this direction, it's at an angle theta. Okay, so you can make this triangle as well, 90-degree angle. Okay. So my O, let's say this point of action of force is P. So OP is my R, and then the frictional force is given by F, and then you can easily calculate the torque about a point O. Sometimes this point will be on an axis, but even if it's on an axis and you're trying to find torque about an axis, basically you're trying to find the torque about a point on the axis. One of the important concepts about rotational motion is that of equilibrium. So we had learned about translation equilibrium before, in which the net forces on the system were zero. So this was the condition for net translation equilibrium. Now I want to talk about two things. I want to talk about rotational equilibrium to be zero, and then to say that a rigid body is in equilibrium. So a rigid body is said to be in a state of rotational equilibrium if its angular acceleration is zero. The angular acceleration alpha is equal to 0. This is the first point. And the rigid body as a whole is said to be in equilibrium if it is translationally as well as rotationally in equilibrium. So separately, both of the conditions should be valid. Okay. So the condition for translation is given to you here, and the condition for rotation as well is given to you. Okay. Generally, the basic example to study this is given us again that of a rod. You have some forces acting on it at different points. Okay, let's say the force acting on it on different point, and you are trying to find the magnitude of the forces or the distance that of third fifth force should be applied so that the system is in equilibrium. So in this system there will be an equilibrium when there is a translational equilibrium first of all, and there is a rotational equilibrium. So for the translational thing, what you will have summation of all the f by is equal to 0. Summation of all the fx is equal to 0. There is no fx in the system right now. And the summation of all the torques about the point, this point, are equal to 0. So how do you calculate the torque here? The torque is quite easily calculated. This is my origin. So the torque for, let's say this force is 1, F1. So I have R cross F1. Similarly, I have R cross F2, R cross F3, and so on. If one of my forces was in this direction, let's say F3, then this will be theta. So I will have some F3 sine theta and F3 cos theta here. So when I do my R cross F3, I will basically be multiplying the magnitudes of R and F3 sine theta. Let's look at another question that is in front of you. A cylinder of radius R and weight W is to be raised against a step of height h by applying a horizontal force along its center as shown in the figure. So the force is F. Since find the required minimum magnitude of the force, and you are assuming that the cylinder and the corner of the step are there such that there is no slipping between them. Now how do you do this? I should draw some things for you to understand this properly. This is again a very simple question. It does not require many skills to solve this. Just if your basics are clear about no slipping conditions, then the rest is very easy. So you have a force here, you have a weight acting downwards, okay, and this is my center C. Now as you can see, it is hitting at some other height, okay. So I'll call this height where it is hitting as some D, okay. Now this is the height. Let me draw the radius also. This is the radius R, okay. Now the weight W, the pull, that is F, and the reaction R from the center. Now because this is the contact that is there, so there will be a normal reaction from this point towards the center, okay. I have drawn everything down in a simple free body diagram. Now we need to find that there is rotation. We need to find the conditions such that there is rotational equilibrium. Now there are three coplanar forces acting on it, F, W, and R, okay. So the torque equations for all of these need to be 0 with respect to the corner B, okay. So with respect to the corner, I have mentioned that, let me write this as B. With respect to this corner, the torque equations, torque with respect to B should be equal to 0. So what does this mean? That F to CD is equal to W into dB, okay. Now what is DC? DC or CD is nothing but R minus H, whereas dB is nothing but root over 2 capital R small h minus h square, okay. Basically you just need to apply this at the point of contact. If I just solve this equation now, I can easily write my F is equal to W into dB by CD, which is nothing but W into root 2 RH minus h square divided by R minus H. So you're done with this question. You just had to balance the torques with respect to the point B, okay. And why do you think I have not included the R here? That is because the R is acting right at the point B. The R is acting right here, or the reaction force. That is why if I just write the torque as R cross F, for F being for R cross R, that will not give me any value, Let's now take a look at a quick example to learn what toppling really means. A question is given in front of you. You are supposed to find the minimum value of f to topple for this object to topple about an edge. Okay, toppling questions generally come in the examinations quite often, and toppling can happen by various things. For example, a question might come in the paper wherein a car is going on a circular track, and then they ask you uh, whether what is the force that is between the wheels, or how much frictional force should be applied so that the car does not topple. Okay, so these kind of questions are often asked in the paper. So what do you mean by toppling? Uh, in the questions of two questions to find whether something topples or not, you first of all, when drawing the free body diagram of this object, for example, if I take this object in question, I have my F here. Okay, I have my weight acting at the center. Okay, now in the case of toppling, what happens is the normal reaction is acting along one of the edges. Till now, when we were just talking about forces and not talking about rotations at all, we used to draw normal reaction anywhere near the center and be over with it. But now in the case of toppling, uh, if I act my normal reaction along one of the edges, okay, then I need to find the torque about a position that is at right, let's say about a point O. So this will topple if there is no net torque about it. If there is a torque, what will happen is this will go down, this edge will go down. Okay, so this is the condition for toppling. You have a normal reaction along one of the edges, and if you take the torque about the point O, what you see is F into this height is B. So F into B, which is R into F, basically R cross F. FB will turn out to be mg into a by 2. Okay, because this length is a by 2. That implies F minimum is equal to mg a by 2b. Okay, this is the minimum force required to topple the object. Why did I not include n in the normal reaction while calculating the torque? Because I chose my point O such that n is in line with O. So when I write the torque due to n, it turns out to be 0 because the angle between them is of the same sort, because it's 0. Okay, so you should keep this in mind, and multiple questions have been asked before. You can be given a wedge on which some object is going down. Okay, and then they ask you what is the force that should be the angle here so that this object topples. So there also what you need to do is you need to make the normal reaction along one of the edges and then find the torque about a position such as this, and then balance the torques on both the sides and find the relation. Next, we can quickly look at some of the formulas which are involved while a general plane motion is taking place. So in a general plane motion, there is an acceleration of the body and there is a rotation of the body as well. Okay, so some basic formulas for these are, first of all, I can write the summation of all the forces on the system, all the external forces, is equal to the acceleration of the center of mass into the mass of the body. So this will take care of the translation part of a system. To show this clearly, I've put in a diagram here. What this shows is this is a body that is moving with some acceleration, and the acceleration of the centroid or the center of mass of the system is given by AC, and it is also revolving or rotating. It is rotating about an axis passing through the center of mass or the centroid with an acceleration alpha. Okay, now I want to find the torque of this entire body. So how do I do that? So first of all, I find my torque as r cross f. Okay, where f is basically MAC. This is for the center of mass of the body, or the centroid of the body through which the axis is passing. And then I add to it the torque of all the particles in the body due to this with respect to this axis. Okay, so I have two terms here. The first one is basically talking only about some net force acting in this direction equal to MAC, and the second one takes care of the rotational part. So you should make a note of this equation, which takes care of all the general plane motion equations. What you see from here is, for a pure rotational case, the torque is nothing but I alpha. Okay, so if I'm talking about pure rotation about an axis passing through the centroid, I basically get my torque is equal to I into alpha. Okay, so this must be remembered. Next are some basic things that come into place. First of all, how to calculate the work done in due to rotation. So the work done going from initial point to the final point is nothing but an integral of torque into d theta. Remember, here it's analogous to my work done in translation motion being equal to F dot dr. Here instead of F I have a torque, and instead of dr I have a d theta. Okay, so you should remember this work done when you are applying this. All these questions will come as formula based questions. So you just need to evaluate what the net torque is and for how long is it acting, and you can easily calculate all the things that are necessary in the system. Next is the question for the kinetic energy of a system. So if a system is both moving and it is rotating, then the kinetic energy is given by half mv square plus half I omega square. Note that all these are being given about the axis passing through the center of mass, or the centroid of the system. So for a pure rotation case, the rotational kinetic energy K rot is nothing but half I c omega square. Okay, so what you learned from here is, first of all, you learned that torque is equal to I into alpha. Here I is the moment of inertia about the axis passing through the center. Similarly, you have, for a pure rotation case, you have the kinetic energy of rotation is equal to half into I omega square. So now whenever a question comes in front of you in which a ball is rolling or something is rotating, so whenever they ask you about the energy, you will also add the term of rotational energy. So for example, if you are given a wedge, in the previous chapters you were only given a wedge and this was just slipping down. Okay, so for this you only wrote kinetic energy is equal to half m into v square. Now because a body might be rolling, okay, so while it's going down, I will write the kinetic energy as half mv square plus half I omega square. Okay, similarly you can find the power. If you find the work, you can easily refer power as dw by dt, or the rate of change of work, and then rate of doing work, sorry, and then you have the same work energy theorem, that work done in going from one position to the other is nothing but k2 minus k1, but now it will also include the effects of rotation in it. So at the point 1, if there are two things, point 1 and point 2, so at the point 1 you are not only concerned about its net position and velocity, you are also concerned about its rotational status that is there. Okay, so these two are also quite important and often asked in the paper. Next is the notion of an impulse. Impulse is again an impulse applying from the position 1 to 2 is nothing but the torque into dt. Note that this is similar to the impulse you studied for a pure rotational case, to be equal to f dt over a time period t. Okay. These are quite similar, and these are only extensions to the translation motion that you've already seen. Okay, and similarly you can write that the potential energy plus the kinetic energy initial is equal to the final potential plus kinetics. So the conservation of mechanical energy still holds, and the conditions for for this principle to be applied will be similar to the conditions that we read for pure translation motion. The only difference is now you will also include an extra term, that is the rotational motion. Let us do a question to get more clarity. So a block of mass small m is suspended with the help of a light cord wrapped over a cylindrical pulley of mass capital M. Okay, the mass of the cylindrical pulley is given as capital M. Okay, and radius r. The system is released from rest. Find the angular acceleration of the pulley and the acceleration of the block. Okay. Note that now the pulleys are not massless, so you will also consider the motion of the pulley or the rotational motion of the pulley. So after the system is released, the block is in translation motion and the pulley is in a rotation motion about the axis which is passing through its center, which is this one. Okay. Now let the block move vertically down with an acceleration a, and let me just draw this free body diagram. Okay, I'll draw the free body diagram in a while. Let me just explain what is happening right now. Now the block will start to move vertically down with an acceleration, let's say a, and it will try to pull the cord down and cause the pulley to rotate clockwise. Now because the cord is inextensible, so every point on its vertical portion and the point of contact, which is P, I'll call this point of contact as P. So every point on this contact of the pulley will move down with the acceleration a. Okay, so if I can show this more clearly, I can make your pulley again. This is your center. Okay, it's revolving by an acceleration alpha, and this point P is moving down with an acceleration is equal to alpha r. Okay, because it's not slipping. This is nothing but the tangential acceleration of the point P. I have mentioned it here. Now I need to make the free body diagram of the pulley and the mass separately, which is not a really hard task to do. So let's just make the free body diagrams. So let's start with the pulley. You have a pulley which is right here. At its center, it has a mass weight acting, which is the non-contact force. Then along here you have a tension force. For the small mass, you have tension on the top and you have mg downwards, and this mass, as soon as this is cut, this will start to move. This will start to move downwards with a force ma. Okay, so these are the basic things. Once my FPD is clear, now we can easily proceed. The pulley will be in a rotation about the axis through its mass center. So what I need to do is I need to first write the torques with respect to the center. Okay, now the torque is nothing but IC into alpha. Torque is equal to I alpha because these are not slipping conditions. Okay, so it's rolling, and that implies you can easily write my wait a second, I think I missed a force here. There should be a normal reaction as R as well. Okay, now my TR is nothing but, sorry, not the normal reaction, let me just call this as having a radius capital R, which was given in the question. Now I just need to find the torque. So torque is equal to IC into alpha. Okay, and we can substitute IC is equal to half mr square. Okay, so basically from here I had T into R, which was radius, is equal to half mr square into alpha. From here we can easily write that T is nothing but half m into A. Okay, because we just substituted my alpha from the equation A is equal to alpha R, which I just showed you here. Okay, so you get the value of tension as this. Now you know that the block is in a translation motion, so now you can easily use the Newton's second law, which says that summation of my F in the y direction for the block is equal to mass into acceleration. This will imply that mg minus t is nothing but ma. Okay, using these equations you can easily find that the acceleration of the block is nothing but 2m small g divided by capital M plus 2m, and similarly alpha will turn out to be 2m small g divided by capital R into m plus 2 small m. Let us now take a quick look at another question. You're supposed to find the moment of inertia about one of the diameters of a hollow sphere of mass small m, inner radius r and outer radius capital R. Okay, so this is similar. This is a condition like this, where this is a hollow sphere, inner radius is small r, outer radius is capital R. Okay, and here all the mass is there, but in the center there is nothing. Okay, so how do you find the moment of inertia of these? You've done it for a solid sphere, you've done it for a hollow sphere, so how will you approach this? Now a hollow sphere can be assumed as if a concentric smaller sphere of radius r has been removed from the larger sphere. Okay, so thus the moment of inertia of the hollow sphere about any axis can be obtained by just subtracting the moment of inertia of the smaller sphere from that of the larger sphere. As you can recall, when we were discussing about truncated bodies and we had to find the center of masses, there we used the superposition principle, and we found the center of mass of the two things separately, and then we added them to find the center of mass of the truncated body. Similar approach is kept here. Let me first say that let the density of the material be rho. Okay, so density is what? It is 3m divided by 4 pi r cube minus r cube. Okay, this is for the hollow sphere. Why? Because this is my hollow sphere. The net total mass of the hollow sphere has been given as m. Okay, and this is inner is r, outer is r. So if I calculate the volume, it's 4 pi by 3 into r cube. Okay, so this much is, first of all you write the density. Okay, now let me draw the complete sphere as well. So this is your complete solid sphere. Okay, when I subtract a small sphere from this, I get this hollow sphere. Okay, we are interested in this hollow sphere. So what will I do? Let masses m1 and m2 of the smaller spheres are. Let me calculate the masses of the smaller spheres as m1 is equal to rho 4 by 3 pi r cube. Okay, is equal to m r cube by r cube minus r minus small r cube. Okay, this is for this mass, the entire body. Let me call this as m2. Okay, my m2 will be what? m2 is equal to rho of 4 by 3 pi r cube, where this is small r. It will turn out to be m into r cube divided by r cube minus small r cube. Okay, so I calculated the masses for both m1 and m2. Okay, now what you do is, now you just subtract the different moments of inertia. Okay, so let me call the moments of inertia as I1 for the entire body, I2 for a small body, and I3 for the body that we are concerned in. So to get the value, what I'll do is, I'll write my I3 is equal to I1 minus I2, which is simply 2m1 r square by 5 minus 2m2 r square divided by 5. Okay, because you are talking about solid spheres in question. For a solid sphere you have 2 by 5 mr square as the moment of inertia. Okay, if you just subtract this and you club terms, you can easily find that this is nothing but, I can write this as an answer, this is nothing but 2m r to the power 5 minus small r to the power 5 divided by 5 into r cube minus small r cube. Okay, this is what you get, and these kind of questions have come in the past many times, so you should definitely take a note of these. One of the questions that I remember from the past papers is you were given a solid sphere, and then another small solid sphere was taken out from near the edges, and then you had to find the moment of inertia of the remaining body, but the approach should be similar. Also take a note that when you write the density, initial density, that will include the mass of the truncated body that is given to you. Okay, you will be given the mass of this, you are not given the mass of the entire thing, so you're trying to find the mass of the complete body. Let us look at one of the questions to get more clarity of what we are doing right now. So a uniform rod AB of mass small m and length L is suspended in horizontal position with the help of two strings as shown in the figure. The string supporting the end B is cut. You're supposed to find the acceleration of the mass center and end A immediately after the string is cut. So let me first just draw what this means. I have my string, I have my end A, B has been cut. Let me call this as the center, so you know that there will be the weight acting on it downwards. Okay, so after the string is cut, the forces that are acting on the rod are the tension in the string A, which is still remaining, and weight of the rod. Okay, so there will be a tension force. Both these forces are vertical in direction, so we can assume that the direction of the center of mass will be vertically downwards. Okay, now the string is known to be inextensible in the question. Okay, so what this means is, by intuition also you can say that my point A can only move in the horizontal direction. Now let me call the acceleration of the center of mass, which is going downwards, as AC, and acceleration of the point A as AA. Okay, now I need to apply the relative motion equations. Okay, so I can easily write AC is equal to AA plus AC with respect to A. Okay, let's write this more properly using the equations that I already know. I have AA plus alpha times alpha cross AC, okay, minus the centripetal one. This is the tangential acceleration. The second component is the centripetal one, which is AC. Now, first of all, let me mark this as the first equation. Now, immediately after the string is cut, the rod cannot acquire any angular velocity. Okay, so the last term in the above equation will just vanish. So what are we left with? We are left with minus AC times J cap is equal to minus AA times I cap plus minus alpha k cross product with half L I cap. Okay. Now you just equate the components, the x and y components on both sides. What will you get? You will get AC is equal to half alpha L, and you will get A acceleration of A is equal to 0. Next, the rod now goes into plane motion, and to analyze this motion, we can apply the superposition of translation of the center of mass and simultaneously the centroidal rotation. So to do this, let me just draw what is happening again. The force is now in place. So I have my rod here. At the point A, there is a force of tension acting. At the center, there is mg downwards. Okay, and what this actually means is this rod has some accelerated motion downwards at the center, and there is some rotation motion about the center equal to IC alpha. Okay. Now I can easily apply the Newton's second law for translation. So for the translation part, I can apply the Newton's law, which says that mg minus t is equal to mac. Okay. And now if I apply the torque equation for the rotation about the centroid here, I can easily say that torque C is equal to summation of torque about C is equal to IC alpha. That implies T into half L is equal to IC into alpha. Now what is the IC or the moment of inertia for a rod about its center? It's nothing but half ml square from the table that I showed you. Okay, so if I substitute that value here, I can easily get T is equal to 1 by 3 mac. Here IC is equal to 1 by 12 ml square. Okay, using these relations, you can easily see that AC turns out to be 3 by 4 G. Finally, I'll talk briefly about the angular momentum. So angular momentum, which is denoted by L, is nothing but your moment of the linear momentum. What does this mean? Let this be my origin. This will be the origin. This is the system I'm taking. There is this particle P, which is having a position vector r, and it is moving with some velocity p. Okay. So the angular momentum is defined about the origin. So note that just as torque was defined about the origin and about axes, similarly your angular momentum of a particle or for a system of particles is also defined with respect to some axis or some point. The first formula gives you the mathematical relationship between angular momentum and the quantities such as r and momentum. This is nothing but r cross p, where p is the momentum, or r p sine theta. Okay. Similarly, if you have a general plane motion in which there is a body which is moving with a velocity vc, or velocity of the center of mass being vc, and it is rotating as well. For example, if I have a rolling ball on a floor, it's going to the right side. Okay, it's rotating as well, and it's moving. So in order to analyze the motion of this ball, what we'll have is my angular momentum is given as r into momentum of my center of mass, okay, plus my moment of inertia into omega. So for a general plane motion, we have equation number 2, equation number 1, and from here you can easily see that for a pure rotation case in which some body is only rotating, I can find that my angular momentum is given by I into omega. This is about what axis? About the axis passing through the center of mass of the system. So whenever you talk about angular momentum or torque, you must also remember that the axis or the point of the point of origin that you're taking plays a vital role. Okay, you will be using this quite often. And the third result that I want to share with you is that torque is nothing but the derivative of angular momentum. Okay, so if the net torque on a system is zero, then you know that the angular momentum remains constant. This you will learn later, but you should know this relationship. Now, similar to what we did in translation, pure translation motion, okay, you can write, you can find the analogy between impulse momentum theorem. Okay, so what you have is you have an initial angular momentum, then you apply an impulse on it, angular impulse on it, you get the final angular momentum. You can go and revisit the lectures on pure translation motion, and you will find that this is similar to that case. Okay, similarly, I've seen that if my net impulse is zero, then my initial angular momentum is equal to final angular momentum. Okay, so that implies my I1 omega 1 is equal to I2 omega 2. So in order to cement our understanding of the concept that we've learned till now, let's look at one of the problems. This problem has been asked multiple times in various formats, and this is a problem of eccentric collisions. I briefly told you about these collisions when we were doing the lecture on collisions and impulse and momentum, and now these are back in place when you have two bodies colliding and the resultant motion to be that of a rotating one. Okay, so let's take a quick look at the question. A uniform rod AB of mass capital M and length small l is kept at rest on a smooth horizontal plane. A particle P of mass m0 moving perpendicular to the rod with velocity v0 strikes the rod at one of its ends. You are supposed to derive suitable expressions for the coefficient of restitution, velocity of center of mass of the rod, angular velocity of the rod immediately after the impact. Okay. Assume it is the coefficient of restitution. So how do you do this question? I am trying to bring in an example so that you're able to derive these quantities on your own and just learn the principles that are involved when you talk about collisions that are eccentric in nature. Okay, so let's focus on what is happening. Now both the bodies can move freely in the horizontal plane. So therefore there is no horizontal external force that is acting in the particle rod system. So the linear momentum as well as angular momentum about any axis which is normal to the plane will be conserved. So you will be conserving your linear momentum as well as angular momentum. In this case, I'll just write linear. I'll just write it again. Your linear momentum and your angular momentum these two will be conserved in the problem, and they will be concerned about any axis which is normal to the plane in which these two things are. Okay, so you should keep this in mind in all the problems involving eccentric collisions. Most of the times the linear momentum and the angular momentum conservation equations will probably give you everything that you need to know about the system. Okay, so I can draw this diagram again. Okay, so let the velocity of the particle, its angular velocity of the rod and velocity of the center of the mass of the rod immediately after the impact be given. So I'll just give these things to you. Let me just call this as the case. This is before collision. This is right after collision. Okay, so you have a ball which just reached here. Okay, its velocity will become Vp prime. This was the center. So the center will move with some velocity Vc. There will be rotation about the center. Okay, so these have been marked, and let me just call it omega prime right now. Okay, so now you first of all you need to use the relative motion equations. So the second point that you should keep in mind is relative motion equations. Okay, so let's just apply these concepts. So if I want to calculate the velocity v prime at a is equal to v prime at c plus half omega prime L. What is this? This is the velocity of the end of the rod A. So I found this out in terms of the velocity c. Now let me denote the linear momentum and the linear momentum of the particle in the rod before the impact to be p. Before the impact it was p1 and it was p c1. Okay, and immediately after the impact I will just call this p2 and pc2. These are the momentums. So I'll just write this is before impact, this is after impact. Okay, now what you do is, now you will apply first of all the principle of conservation of linear momentum. So let's just apply this to the system. What do we have here? We have p of the particle after the collision plus the rod after the collision is equal to initial momentum. If I write this in terms of masses and velocities, I can easily write this as m v prime p plus m v prime c is equal to m v naught. So this is the first result that we get from here. What is this result showing you? This result is showing you that the center of the mass of the rod is moving towards the right. Okay. Now we are trying to write the angular momentum of the rod about some stationary point O. Okay, which should be in line with the velocity v prime c. Now how do you do this? We first of all we denote the angular momentum of the particle and the rod about the point O as L P1 and L R1. Okay, so let me draw this again. Actually there is no need to draw it again. You can easily, I can zoom it out and you can refer to this diagram. Okay, so what you see here is, if I apply the conservation of angular momentum here again, I can easily write L P2 plus L C2. This is after the collision, right after. L, let me call this L R2, and this is equal to L P1 plus L R1. Okay, so these are the angular momentum, and what do I equate these to? Note that I have taken my point of my angular momentum about a point O, which is in line with my Vc. Okay, the Vc prime, the velocity of the center of mass. Okay, so with respect to this, what do we have? We can write this equation as half m v prime p into L plus half, not half, IC into omega prime is equal to half m v naught into L. Okay, now I can easily substitute IC is equal to 1 by 12 ml square, because we are taking this around this point. okay, around the center. So what do I get? I put I is equal to 1 by 12 ml square. So I get 6 m v prime p plus m l omega prime is equal to 6 m v naught. Okay. So what does this tell me? The velocity of the endpoint A of the rod before the impact was 0, and immediately after the impact it becomes v prime A towards the right. Okay. Now if I employ these factors, we can easily express the coefficient of restitution which we were supposed to find. What is the coefficient of restitution? Coefficient of restitution is nothing but v prime. I'll just mark some things again so that these become clear. They are v prime q n minus v prime p n divided by v p n minus v q n. Okay, and what is this equal to? That implies v prime a minus v prime p is nothing but e times v naught. Okay, now if I just substitute the expression from v prime a from before, I can write this as 2 v prime c plus omega prime l minus 2 v prime p is equal to 2 e v naught. Okay, now if you have all these quantities, you can easily find the velocity of the ball immediately after the impact. You can also find velocity of mass, center of mass immediately after the impact, and you can find angular velocity immediately after the impact, the angular velocity. So what do these come out to be? These come out to be p prime p is equal to 4m minus e m divided by 4 small m plus big M into v naught. Similarly, b prime c is equal to m into 1 plus e divided by 4m plus capital M into v naught, and you have omega prime is nothing but 6m 1 plus e by 4m plus m v naught by L. Okay, so what did we learn from this question? In order to approach a question in which there is an eccentric collision, so that there is a rotational motion right after the collision happens, what you need to do is you need to be aware of the relative motion equations, and you need to conserve linear momentum and angular momentum about an axis that is perpendicular to the plane. Okay, and then using just these three things, you can find every other quantity that is required from the question. Let us quickly look at one more problem. A uniform rigid body of mass small m and round section of radius r is rolling down a slope inclined at an angle theta to the horizontal. The radius of gyration of the body about its central axis is given by k. You are supposed to derive suitable expressions for angular velocity and velocity of the center of mass as it covers the distance x. Also, you are supposed to obtain the expression for its angular acceleration and acceleration of the center of mass. So what is different in this question? As you can see that this problem is involving a change in the angular velocity with a change in position. So whenever this happens, there is a demand of the application of the principle of work and energy. Okay, so you can make a small note here that if there is a change in angular velocity, it's a delta omega with change in the position, then it is often the case that we will be requiring the principle of work energy. Okay, so let's start this question. Now first of all, the geometric center and the center of mass for the uniform body is coinciding. Therefore, let the center C be the mass center which is given to you here, or the center of mass. Okay, Now while this is rolling down, the point of contact, which I call as P here, which must always be at instantaneous rest. Okay, and the angular velocity, which is omega in this question, and the velocity of the center C, angular acceleration alpha, and acceleration of the center must follow the relations that are there for rolling without slipping, which are your Vc is equal to omega r and your AC is equal to alpha r. Okay, conditions for rolling without slipping. Okay, now in order to analyze this motion, which is rolling plus translation, I can use this as a superposition of the two motions separately, the translation of the center of mass and simultaneous rotation about the center of mass. So yeah, initially what was my kinetic energy of the system? It was 0. Okay, finally what is the kinetic energy? It is half mvc square plus half ic omega square. Okay, now you've given the radius of gyration as k, so you can easily substitute the value of ic as mk square. Okay, so this gives you that final kinetic energy is nothing but half m into if I just substitute IE is equal to mk square, I will get half m r square plus k square into omega square. Using that Vc is equal to omega r. Okay, now the forces that are acting on the body are its weight, the normal reaction n, and the force of static friction. So we've made these FBDs multiple times before. So let me just make the free body diagram of this once more. It's similar to what we've been studying till now. You have a ball here. There will be a normal reaction from the surface in this direction. Okay, your forces that will be there are your mg cos theta in this direction. Similarly, there will be a mg sin theta in the direction parallel to the incline, and you have a frictional force that is acting in the opposite direction. Okay, and if I draw this more properly, then I can easily say that frictional is on the right side. Similarly, I have mg sin theta on the left side. I can redraw my normal to be around here, and my gravity mg cos theta around here. Okay, so your free body diagram is made. So now what are you supposed to do? You know that the normal reaction and the force of static friction do no work in rolling. Okay, so the normal reaction and the static force will not be doing any work. I need to write the total net work done in the system. Okay, so let me just write it down. My work is equal to integral of FDR. Okay, so the work in going from the top point to the point that is mentioned after a distance x is nothing but going from initial position to final position is equal to mgx sin theta. Okay, note from this question that neither the normal reaction does any work on the system nor does the frictional force. Okay, now you can easily substitute the values that we found earlier into this equation and use that the work done from 1 to 2 is nothing but k2 minus k1, or this is my init, and this using 1 as the initial position, 2 as the final position, I can write my omega is equal to root 2gx sin theta by k square plus r square, and using this you can find the Vc because we know that V is equal to omega r. So I can easily get this as my Vc is nothing but root over 2gx sin theta by k square by r square plus 1. Okay. Using these, I can easily calculate the acceleration. How do you do this? The acceleration A and the velocity V are related like this. A is equal to V into dV by dx. So if I just apply this here, my acceleration turns out to be g sine theta by k square by r square plus 1. I ask you to make a note of these because multiple times a similar problem will come, and note that the acceleration is independent of your coordinate x. Okay, and similarly you can find your angular acceleration as well, and this is equal to g sine theta divided by k square by r plus r. Okay, you can easily make a short note on these two values.